Alrighty, well, this one took me a little while to film. Getting started on the wiring. First things first that I had to do was make sure that I could have power to everything. So battery cables were first. I used the painless wiring battery kit as well as a hydraulic crimper. Alright, got this all painted. Radiator's in for good. Got my brackets and the isolators. That's what I was waiting on, was those isolators, but now that's in. I have all of I have negative to the battery, to the block to the frame. We've got back of the block to the cab. We have cab to the frame. We also have core support to the frame. And then I have this grounding block or grounding lug that I can run something from the inside and then run it directly over to the battery. So that's in. Now we got to make our positive terminals. So we're going to go positive. We're going to loop this down here, come all the way to the starter. Can finally get this on there. Go to the starter and continue getting this thing wired up. Alright, it's positive post, down snakes through there, down to the starter. PCM is also attached to the starter there. So we are going to move on to the alternator. After the battery kit, we started on the alternator. Now I went and bought the Painless Performance alternator kit, which you don't have to do because with the entire wiring harness and fuse panel, the chassis harness, that comes with that. So I had 2 of those. I didn't return it. I actually ended up using it for a little bit of additional wiring and whatnot. So it was nice to have that little bit extra, but you don't need to buy that. Once the alternator was in and wired up, essentially what I needed to do is start going through the harness and figure out what wires that I needed, what wires that I didn't need. When I first got this thing, I was very intimidated by it, but once you break it down, it's really fairly simple. Alright, so we have the painless wiring kit here. And when I first got it, I definitely was a little bit intimidated by it at first, but once you kind of break it down, it's not so bad. So it's basically 3 trunks of this. You have your under the dash, you have your tail section, and then you have your engine section, and then you can split these up. So this, for example, and I labeled, where did I put it? Basically in this one, this is mainly your power to it. This is going to be to your engine, so this is going to be a lot of sources for your gauges and things like that. So a lot of this is we're actually not going to use. And then for your headlights, you come to the tail section. This all gets split up. Same thing, tail lights, third brake lights, all of that. Well, this is third brake light, which we're going to use even though the truck doesn't have one. And I'll show you what we're going to do there. Some of it can be repositioned, so like the dome light obviously is in the cab. That doesn't need to be in the tail section, so we're going to put that more kind of in this under dash section. But then your under dash basically gets split up into a few different things. You've got goes to your dimmer switch. This is basically just this is delete, and I don't remember why. Oh, the cooling fan. That's going to be controlled by the PCM, so we don't necessarily need that. Here we've got the gauge cluster, so that goes to all your gauges. Again, we're not going to use most of these or probably any of them, because the PCM is going to take care of that. Then we've got to your turn signal switch. Then you've got to your ignition switch. Then you've got your headlight switch. Here we have other switches, and then the dome light. So when you break it up into sections, it definitely becomes much less intimidating. So this is pretty much all that needs to go through the firewall, and then this actually will have to go through the firewall, but in a separate section because it's going to the rear of the truck, and then all of this is going to be tucked up under the dash somewhere. So makes it a little bit easier. Okay, so first things first is the fuse box for the PCM. Now this needed a place to go, so I'm making a bracket that will put this like right here in hidden, but still serviceable. So the way I did that, these are painted, they are drying in clear coat. I'll show you that when that's in. But what we're going to be doing first is this engine section. So like I said, there's the 3 main trunks. We're on the engine section. We've got 3 kind of sub trunks from there, so we're going to focus on this one here first. Alright, ignore my painted hands, but there are 8 wires in this section. You'll count 7 there because I already removed 1. 1 is this red wire, and that's to the electric choke. Obviously we don't have an electric choke, so that's going. This thick purple one goes to the starter solenoid. The orange one here, and these are all labeled, so it's not like I memorized all this. It goes to the brake switch. We have this blue and black one that's going to be your oil gauge, so your oil pressure. Because we're running a mechanical oil pressure gauge, we're going to be using this. This doesn't go to the PCM. And then we have this green one here goes to the temp sensor. Now the temp sensor is part of the PCM, so we're going to remove that. This one is the turn switch. So this we're going to pull out of this section, this white one here, we're going to pull out of this section, and we're going to keep that one that goes under the dash because that goes in under the steering wheel. And then we have these 2. So the pink one is the ignition positive to the coil, and then the purple one is the ignition or the coil negative, which goes to the instrument panel. We don't need this one, I believe, so we're going to take that out. But then this pink one, we're also not going to put this into the engine compartment because this is the one that we're going to use to power the PCM. Alright, so after deleting the wires we need, that trims it down from 8 to 4. So next we're moving on to the more power section. This thicker wire is going to go to your MIDI fuse. This next one here is your regulator power, so just to the battery. This black one with the white stripe is to the AC compressor or heat. I don't have that in my engine compartment, so that's going to come out. And then the white wire is to the alternator exciter, and that's controlled by the PCM. So both of these are going to come out of this section, this black and the white one, and the white one's going to come out permanently. Alright, we're in the headlight section now. There's 7 wires here. You've got your high beam, low beam. These 3 real little ones are your turn signals and parking light. And then these 2, this turquoise one as well as this gray one, are the 2 that we're going to remove. The turquoise one is for the horn. I don't have a horn, so I'm not worried about that. And then this one here is for the cooling fan. That is once again controlled by the PCM, so these 2 are going to come out. Okay, so we're in the truck, and we have this fuse box here from PSI conversions, and this goes to the PCM. So looking down at this, get this in the light here. So the things we still need to wire are going to be this PCM ignition, 15 amp. That's that wire from the chassis harness that it goes to the coil. That's the one that we're going to use for that. It's an ignition wire. And then when we look down at the relays here, the way that we're going to wire this here is into this lower relay, which if we look, that's the ignition relay. And then in the fuel pump relay, there's 2 things we need to do. We need a constant power to the relay, and what I did for that is on the back of the glove box I wired up a positive from the battery as well as a ground. So that way any future relays or anything along those lines we have constant power. And then this one here we need to go to the fuel pump, so I'm going to start wiring that through. While we do that, we also need to route for the fuel sender. We also need to route back here the third brake light, which I'm going to show you what we're going to do for that in just a second here. All right, we are pretty much ready to get the chassis harness fuse panel in here and start running the wires through the firewall. So let's get cracking on that. All right, so what I'm getting done next is kind of getting more set up for the chassis harness. We have the original bulkhead here. I'm using the Painless Performance, and it's basically just the universal 21 circuit. It's like $400 cheaper than the specific one that's for this. And basically it's because I'm a glutton for punishment. It doesn't come with all the connectors and all those things, and it's a little more customizable, which is great considering a lot of the circuits are going to be redundant with some of the things that we have going for the PSI engine harness. So for this, the bulkhead connector, it doesn't come with a square bulkhead connector. It's just a bundle of wire with a grommet, and then it comes with this universal bracket, which I cut and modified so that it fits right on there. So what we're gonna do, and the reason I have this taped off, is I'm gonna silicone all of this, and then we are gonna rivet this on there, and then we'll have a nice clean opening that we can get the round grommet to work. So let's get going with that. Once I had my game plan with my wiring harness, then I could start fishing it through the firewall and start wiring up components. Initially, all I'm going to get going here is the ignition, as well as the wiring to the PCM, and finalize that. I already had the PCM harness all in and ready to go, except for a couple little minor things here and there. Really just because I wanted to hear this thing fire up. Alright, so now that that's through, there's a ton of space in this grommet, so that's not going to work. What I did get, not thinking I would need it, is this. Kind of opens up on the bottom. What this will do is it'll be like that, and the wires will come out from the bottom. So I think I'm going to use this. I just need to punch out some holes and get this on. Okay, well, the engine side is done. Still need to do the oil pressure sensor. I need a spacer because I'm running just a single wire mechanical and it doesn't fit down there. So I need to get a spacer for that. Then you come down to the starter solenoid. And that's all wired up there. So I can get the exhaust back on, and we're practically done in the engine bay, minus the headlights and stuff. Alright, so I just finished up wiring the ignition switch. So when we look under here, you can see all that in there. I did just do a test and turn the key, and we have power to the fuel pump, which is great. I did disconnect this from the distribution block back there. I want to see if it's going to crank. So I checked the oil, everything looks good there. We're just going to see if the cranking works, which it should. Let's see what we get. I'm going to prime the fuel pump like 3 times.
Say when.
fuel pump kick on. Exhaust.
All good.
Smell gas.
All good.
Oh, what? That was dumb.
What?
She's so cute.
Starting to run out of juice.
Put more in there.
Something's burning.
You can smell it in here. You can't smell it off front. Fuck. It smells electric.
She's ripping his hair out.
All right.
Say yay, Daddy, yay!
After finally starting this and hearing this thing fire up, I've been, I don't want to say dreaming about it, but I kind of have been, and wanting to hear this thing and what it's going to sound like with the long tubes and the dual exhaust that I built, and to hear that moment, you know, that's why we do this, right? It was huge. So I'm still kind of shaky from it, just from excitement. So I was feeling really energized to really start kicking this project a little bit more in gear, a little bit faster, and get this thing on the road. Reason there's a little bit more urgency now. We're building a house. I've mentioned that in the last couple of videos, but we're 6 weeks out from moving. So pressure's on. It's not going to be done in 6 weeks, but it's got to be roadworthy, and I want to drive it. I'm not trailering it to the new house. I am driving it. So maybe in the next video, because I want to get this one up, maybe in the next video I'll show you what the shop situation is going to look like over there. It's definitely a little bit different. I'm going to sacrifice just a little bit of size overall from this shop, but we're going to be more efficient. We're going to make that work a little bit better. So anyways, before I sign off on this, I want to give a huge shout out to my buddy Brad. His Instagram I'll put right down here. He helped me with several wiring questions that I have. I would not say by any means that I am an expert or even necessarily know exactly what I was doing with this wiring, and he was able to iron out the questions that I did have. He builds awesome shit. He's finishing up a 64 Impala that's big block bagged. He builds cool shit. You need to go look at what he's doing. Give him a follow. And you know, Brad, if you do see this, thank you for your help. So it's great to have resources and friends that are willing to chip in, you know, when they have a little bit more expertise than you. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I will see you in the next one. I have no idea what we're going to do next, but I'm actually going to be starting it right now. So see you guys later.